Hi everyone, this is Kiev from the Mother's Magi, and today we're going to talk about why so many people say that they don't feel anything when they sit in front of their ancestral or spiritual altars and shrines and pray or meditate and try to communicate with these energies. The first thing I want to point out is that as humans, we have tons of different sensory input options for our bodies. We have the five major senses that most people share, which are sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, right? But your body has over 20 other senses, and new ones are discovered all the time. Just recently, it was discovered that people have a special gland and a special sense that allows them to be sensitive to one degree or another to changes in electromagnetic fields. So these are advances in science that tend to correlate with things that we experience that may not have had an explanation before. So when it comes to feeling things, there's a lot of feeling in the sense of senses that aren't physical. So some people do feel physical things, stomach aches or things in their body. Some people actually feel energy wash over them physically, but not everyone is receptive or sensitive to that, or in the moment that they're practicing or beginning, they aren't yet. So really, when you're sitting down and you're praying and meditating with your spirits and your ancestors, the feeling that you're looking for, the senses that you're looking for, you have to expand your mind. You kind of have to not say, was that itch in my leg a sign? Is my hair moving? You want this input. Really, you want to be open to this input coming from a non-physical place. So you have to be more open and more sensitive to things and changes like air pressure, the temperature in the room, humidity in the room, things, how they feel around you. Do you feel a weight? Do you feel freer? Do you feel like someone is standing next to you even though you don't see them? These are the senses that you have to begin to use in order to open yourself up better for connection and communication. A good exercise that you can do on your own in order to kind of help with this is to deprive yourself of one of the other senses for the time that you're doing your prayers or your meditation. At the beginning of my journey, one of my spiritual mentors would have me either bandage my eyes and listen to the pre-recorded prayers and go along with them, or I would stuff up my ears with cotton and earbuds basically to close them up, so that the only thing that really resonated was the sound of my voice. Okay, so this is the first sphere of things that we have to kind of keep in our mind, is how we're open and how we're interpreting senses and communication on a physical and an energetic level. The second thing we have to think about is that the prayers that we're saying or the meditations that we're doing are very rarely ever constructed specifically for us. They're generalized things that are there for a wide swath of humanity to apply and to use in order to get to a certain point or goal. So prayers are not necessarily about the words in them. Prayers are really about understanding what the prayer means, what the prayer says, what is the goal of this prayer. And I have noticed that in 95% of the cases where people are not able to connect through prayer, it's because they're focused on the words and the literal meaning of the words, and oftentimes the historical attachment to these words, instead of the message and the clarity and the idea that is brought forth by the prayer. So if you're sitting in front of your Borida, your spiritual shrine for many people, and you're just rambling on prayers, especially from the Cardassian Spiritism books, which are great prayers, but they are very heavily Christian and Catholic influenced. So they tend to, let's say, bring back a lot of trauma for people, or make people feel marginalized, whatever issues. At this point, they're good prayers, but if you're focused heavily on the prayers and their history, you're not really focusing on the meaning of the prayer. So if you're just sitting there saying words, or you're sitting there having your mind occupied about the differences that you feel because of these things, then you're not really focusing on the energetic point of the prayer. You're still focusing on the physical part of it, right? So you want to take that extra step. You want to look at prayers and understand them in the sense of, what is this telling me about spirit? You can leave out the references to gods and Jesus and whatever it may be that are extemporaneous or extra to you, because the meaning of the message can be taken away without reliance on a third party. When you break down the prayers themselves, you will note that each and every one will have something that it asks for and something that the person provides. That's usually the balancing thing in a prayer. Now, in Christian prayers and Christian Catholic prayers, especially in the Kardec books, there's a lot of human misery, right? Oh, woe be me, I'm human, I was born with sin, blah, 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 blah. Leave that out. That's not part of the actual prayer. What you would notice is that when we invoke good spirits and when we invoke the spirits of ancestors to be with us, we ask them to remove from us those traits that we perceive as negative so that we may be pure in our communication with them. So we do this so that we are ourselves sacrificing something that brings us closer to the spirits and able to communicate with them and pass on their messages if need be. So the reason we sacrifice something is because A, everything has a price in existence, and B, because that's your commitment. That's you showing the spirits that, hey, I'm willing to put aside this portion of my humanity in order to be in tune with you who has moved on from this physical shell, right? So those are the energetic equivalents of prayers. We're trying to connect the actual meaning of the prayer and the sensation you're taking from it and moving forward with it. Try to leave the words behind. If you're focused on the words, you're never going to be able to feel the energetic exchange or communication that's trying to come across. You have to be open to it, and being open to it means leaving behind material differences and material biases. The third reason that a lot of people don't feel interaction or things from their spirits is because you yourself are going through the motions but not necessarily plugging it in the battery. At the beginning of a lot of person's spiritual journeys or energetic journeys, religious journeys, whatever, there is a moment where you must either learn how to move energy through prayer, chant, ritual, whatever it may be in your chosen spirituality, and then just saying words. There's a huge difference. That's actually what becomes the difference in quote unquote spells and magic. The ability to use a form of prayer to actually motivate and move energy versus using prayer to call on something else to do it, which would make you a priest. So when you're sitting and you're beginning to say your prayers and you're like, oh, okay, so this prayer is actually about the purity of soul in order to receive the messages from the universe that we need to convey to others in order to avoid contamination through our own material paradigm. So you've got that part of the prayer down. Now you're like, how the hell do I do this? This is where the skill of visualization comes up. Now visualization really took off, especially in Wicca in the 60s and 70s, and it's been a big part of New Age culture and spiritual socio-religious practices, especially in Western culture for decades now. But visualization is basically the layman's term. The visualization would be the washing down of energy work, because they tell you imagine it, see it in your mind, but you're not. When you imagine it, you're actually forcing its change and effect on the energetic plane. So when we say the word visualize, what we mean actually is you have to step into yourself on an energetic level, and there'll be other videos on doing that, but you kind of want to project your energy towards your spirit or your ancestors in a way that is both communicative and binding and relatable, so that they can reach out and they can mesh with you, and you can build basically an energy bridge between the two sources of life, yours and the source of life that we call spirit, right? Because knowledge and consciousness is a form of life. So we're communicating with those. Now, if you're communicating with your ancestors, it's still a form of life because it's life beyond the material. We all die. No matter who you are, at some point, all of existence will wink out of creation and go back to what it was before. So nothing is eternal. But as humans, we are both material creatures, and we have a specific form of consciousness that allows us to tap into those that came before, because we share material and spiritual bonds with them. So regardless of whether you're addressing them as spirit guides or as ancestors or as both, remember that you are a source and they are a source, and you need to connect those two things in order to really make the relationship flow. You're trying to literally pierce between worlds. There's a reason that we say there's veils between worlds, because there's an energetic barrier that is like a stopover or whatever that we have to get through in order to communicate and understand the spirits that walk with us and that were born with us and have come before us. So for my students, one of the basic meditations that we teach them is to see themselves as a small little bonsai tree sitting next to a giant oak tree. And you, as a little bonsai tree, must take your roots and kind of drive them through the ground towards the oak tree, which is immense, huge, way bigger than us because we up a drop in the bucket and we're trying to reach the bucket. And part of that visualization, part of that forming that energy bridge is actually getting the roots of the little bonsai tree, you, to touch, reach, and meld with the roots of the big oak tree, your spirit guides, your ancestors. And that, because of your own subconscious imagery and understanding of nature and biology, will automatically, just like when plants flow chlorophyll and water through their tributaries through the canals, so will your energy flow and then connect with your spirits and ancestors and then make a unified whole. This is something that you're going to want to work on over time. If you can do this in 5 minutes, chances are you're not going to feel anything because the amount of energy that you pour into your little bonsai tree, actually extending its roots and moving as you pray, is how you're going to charge it. That's how you're going to make it work. You can swap this visualization / meditation out with anything that basically comes down to connecting and growing between two opposite forces of energy. But the trick is that the forces must be alive. Just because something is not incarnate or material does not mean it is dead. True death means that you no longer exist. There is no contact. There is no shade, ghost, apparition, spirit, ka, mu, left. There is nothing. Right? So death is simply a word that we use to indicate material transition into energy. So you're still sources of both life and power on both sides. So when you say that you don't feel your spirits and you say that you don't feel your ancestors, 99% of the time it's one of these three problems. And it can be easily solved by stepping more into the energy of things than into the physicality of them, operating more on an internal level. So try that out. When you sit down to pray, especially at your boveda, which is either a big font of water with some cups around it, or just one big cup of water for those of you that are familiar, whether you're sitting at your ancestral shrine or wherever you may have put up your things for your spirits, remember that this is something that you have to stop and do on an energetic level. It has to come from within. And once you start doing that, no matter who you are, you will begin to pick up on intuition, on impressions, on cross thoughts, on information from other sources, on gut feelings. You just have to be aware of yourself and your surroundings and your actions on a more energetic level. So this is like literally the number one question that I always get, and this was as pared down an answer as I could prepare. So I hope you enjoy it. As always, you can shoot us any questions and we'll be happy to answer them. Have a great day.